My wife is the governor. You can't talk to me like this. The words cut through the Providence municipal courtroom with the kind of entitlement that makes everyone within earshot hold their breath. A 48-year-old man in a tailored suit stood at the defendant's table, his finger pointed directly at Judge Caprio, his voice dripping with the absolute certainty that he was untouchable. But he wasn't. What Henry Carlisle didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have imagined, was that his wife, Governor Ava Carlisle of Rhode Island, had made a phone call to the court 2 days earlier. A phone call that would shatter every assumption he had built his marriage upon. A phone call that revealed a secret she had kept from him for nearly 6 months. The case itself was straightforward enough. Henry Carlisle had nearly run down a 65-year-old disabled veteran in a crosswalk. Leonard Briggs, 2 tours in Iraq, partial paralysis from an IED, confined to a wheelchair, had been crossing legally when Henry's Mercedes came within inches of striking him. The crosswalk camera caught everything. The officer's body cam captured the rest. Henry screaming at the veteran to move faster, then screaming at the responding officer that his wife would end careers. But this wasn't just about a traffic violation anymore. This was about a man who believed power was inherited through marriage, and a wife who had already decided otherwise. Tell us where you're watching from, because what happened next in this Providence courtroom became one of the most shared moments in the history of this channel. The clock showed 10:22 a.m. Wednesday morning. Case number 2026 TR 442 was about to be called, and a man who thought his wife's office made him royalty was about to discover what accountability actually looks like. Ms. Porter adjusted her microphone and opened the case file. The courtroom had its usual morning energy, but there was something different today, a tension that everyone could feel but no one could name. Case number 2026 TR 4412, the City of Providence versus Henry James Carlisle. Charges include failure to yield to a pedestrian in a marked crosswalk, reckless endangerment of a disabled person, verbal harassment of an officer, and contempt for attempting to interfere with court process. Henry rolled his eyes. This is absurd, completely absurd. Mr. Carlisle, Judge Caprio said calmly, do you understand the charges being read against you this morning? I understand that you're wasting my time, and my wife's time, and the taxpayers' time. 10:24 a.m. Case file opened. Defendant present. Defense counsel waived. Defendant self-representing with notice that the governor's office is aware of this hearing. Judge Caprio studied the man in front of him. 48 years old. No prior criminal record. Married to the sitting governor of Rhode Island, and radiating the kind of arrogance that suggested he had never once in his life been told the word no. Mr. Carlisle, I have in front of me footage from a crosswalk camera, body cam audio from the responding officer, a text message screenshot, and a voicemail recording. Would you like to explain what happened on the afternoon of September 12th? Nothing happened. An old man was crossing too slowly. I honked. He overreacted. End of story. The footage suggests you came within 18 inches of striking him. He should have been paying attention. He was in a wheelchair, Mr. Carlisle, in a marked crosswalk, with the light in his favor. Henry waved his hand dismissively. Look, can we speed this along? I have a luncheon at noon. My wife is expecting me. The dismissiveness in Henry's voice was almost theatrical. But underneath it, Judge Caprio could see something else. The particular kind of confidence that comes from never having faced consequences. This was a man who had spent years believing that his wife's position created a bubble around him, a force field that deflected accountability. Mr. Carlisle, you mentioned your wife. Does the governor know you're here today? Of course she knows everything, and she's going to end this hearing. How do you imagine she'll do that? Henry smiled. It was the kind of smile that suggested he was sharing a joke that only powerful people understood. My wife has resources, Judge. Connections, one phone call, and this whole thing gets reassigned to someone more reasonable. I see. And have you made that phone call? I don't need to. She handles these things. Text screenshot submitted as evidence. From Henry to friend, dated September 13th. Court date Wednesday. Don't worry about it. Ava will make a call and this whole thing disappears. Being married to the governor has its perks. Judge Caprio read the text aloud. Henry's smile flickered. That text was private. It was submitted as evidence by an anonymous source. The question is whether it accurately reflects your expectations for this hearing. I don't see why that matters. It matters because you seem to believe that your wife's position exempts you from the law. I want to understand where that belief comes from. Henry's confidence wavered for just a moment. She's always protected me. That's what spouses do. Is it? The side door opened. A woman walked into the courtroom. She was dressed simply, professionally, with the kind of composure that comes from years in the public eye. She walked to the back of the gallery and sat down without speaking. Governor Ava Carlisle had arrived. Henry didn't see her. He was too focused on the judge, too certain that the call would come any moment, the call that would make this all go away. He had no idea that his wife was sitting 15 feet behind him, watching everything, and she looked ashamed. 10:42 a.m. Governor Ava Carlisle enters courtroom. Defendant unaware. Governor requests to observe without immediate announcement. Judge Caprio noticed her immediately. He gave a small nod, barely perceptible, acknowledging her presence without alerting Henry. Mr. Carlisle, let's discuss what happened at the scene. Officer Price is here to provide testimony. I'd like to hear from him before we continue. This is ridiculous. I want to call my wife. You'll have an opportunity to do that. First, I want to hear from the responding officer. Fine, but this is a waste of everyone's time. The governor shifted slightly in her seat. Her eyes never left her husband. Officer Julian Price took the witness stand. He was in his mid-30s with the calm demeanor of someone who had seen enough courtroom drama to be unimpressed by theatrics. Officer Price, can you describe what you observed when you arrived at the scene? Yes, Your Honor. I responded to a call about a near collision at the crosswalk on Westminster and Mathewson. When I arrived, I found Mr. Briggs, the victim, in his wheelchair on the sidewalk. He was visibly shaken. Several bystanders were with him. What was his condition? He was trembling, Your Honor. He told me that a vehicle had come so close to hitting him that he felt the wind from it. He said if his chair had been 6 inches further forward, he would have been struck. Did you locate the defendant? Yes. Mr. Carlisle had pulled his vehicle to the side of the road approximately half a block away. When I approached, he immediately told me that his wife was the governor and that I should think carefully about how I proceeded. Body cam audio excerpt. Officer Price, 4:17 p.m. Sir, I need to see your license and registration. Do you know who I am? Do you know who my wife is? Sir, I need to see your documentation. My wife is the governor of this state. One phone call and you're directing traffic in Woonsocket. Think about that. Judge Caprio let the audio finish. Then he looked at Henry. One phone call and you're directing traffic in Woonsocket. Is that what you said, Mr. Carlisle? Henry's jaw tightened. I was frustrated. The officer was being confrontational. The officer was doing his job. His job is to protect people like me, not harass us over a minor traffic incident. From the gallery, Leonard Briggs, the disabled veteran, raised his hand slightly. Your Honor, may I speak? Please, Mr. Briggs. The elderly man wheeled himself forward. His movements were careful, deliberate. I served 2 tours in Iraq. An IED took most of the function in my legs in 2007. I've spent 17 years learning how to navigate a world that wasn't built for people like me. He paused. When that car came at me, I thought I was going to die. Not in a war zone, not serving my country, but in a crosswalk in Providence, because some man in a nice car didn't want to wait 3 extra seconds. Henry looked away. And then, when the officer came, I heard him yelling about his wife, about phone calls, about ending careers, and I thought, this is what I fought for. This? Henry was starting to crack. His earlier swagger had dimmed, replaced by something closer to desperation. Your Honor, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I never intended to hurt anyone. I was in a hurry. I made a mistake. But this is being blown out of proportion. Is it? My wife will tell you. She knows me. She knows I'm not a bad person. You keep mentioning your wife. Do you believe she'll intervene on your behalf? Of course she will. She's my wife. She protects me. That's what she does. From the back of the courtroom, Governor Ava Carlisle stood. Actually, that's not what I do. Henry spun around. His face went white. Ava, why are you here? I'm here because I received a copy of the evidence in this case 3 days ago, and because I needed to see for myself what you've become. Voicemail transcription, Governor's office to court, 2 days prior. This message is from the office of Governor Ava Carlisle. The governor wishes to make clear that she will not be intervening in case number 2026 TR 442. Any suggestion that the governor's office has attempted to influence this proceeding is false. The governor requests permission to attend as an observer. She further notes that she and Mr. Carlisle have been legally separated for 4 months. Judge Caprio read the transcription aloud. Henry's face shifted from white to gray. Separated? We've been separated since May, Henry. I moved out of the residence. I filed the paperwork. You didn't notice because you never pay attention to anything that doesn't directly benefit you. That's not true, Ava, I had my attorney send you the documents. You signed them without reading them. You thought they were tax forms. The courtroom was silent. Judge Caprio allowed the moment to settle before he spoke. Governor Carlisle, I want to thank you for your transparency. I understand this is a difficult situation. It's not difficult, Your Honor. It's embarrassing. My husband, my soon-to-be ex-husband, has spent years believing that my position gave him permission to treat people badly. That's not what public service means, and it's not who I am. She turned to face Henry directly. I've spent my entire career fighting for accountability, for the idea that no one is above the law. And for 4 years, I've watched you use my name to get out of speeding tickets, to skip lines, to intimidate people who were just doing their jobs. Ava, please, I'm not finished. When I saw the footage of what you did to that veteran, when I heard the way you spoke to that officer, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. Not as a governor, not as your wife. Like this video if you missed Judge Caprio, because this is exactly the kind of moment that made his courtroom legendary. Your Honor, Governor Carlisle continued, I'm not here to ask for leniency. I'm here to ask for accountability. My husband needs to understand that actions have consequences, even for people with connections. Henry's shoulders sagged. The fight had gone out of him entirely. Mr. Carlisle, Judge Caprio said, do you have anything you'd like to say? Henry was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. I didn't know. About the separation. About how she felt. I thought we were partners. Being partners means respecting each other's values. It means not using someone's position to avoid accountability. Did you ever consider what your behavior might cost her? No, I didn't think about it. That's the problem, Mr. Carlisle. You didn't think about your wife, about the veteran you nearly struck, about the officer you threatened. You only thought about yourself. Judge Caprio turned to his notes. I've heard enough to make a ruling. Mr. Carlisle, I'm finding you responsible on all charges: failure to yield to a pedestrian in a marked crosswalk, reckless endangerment of a disabled person, verbal harassment of an officer, and contempt for attempting to interfere with court process. Henry nodded slightly. He no longer had the energy to object. The easy thing for me to do would be to impose maximum penalties, substantial fines, extended community service, a permanent mark on your record. And frankly, there's a part of me that believes you've earned exactly that. He paused. But this courtroom isn't about punishment for its own sake. It's about making things right. It's about giving people the opportunity to understand what they've done and to become better. Sentencing timeline, case 2026 TR 442, days 1 to 7. Written apology to victim, court reviewed before delivery. Days 1 to 60, 80 hours community service with veterans organizations. Immediate 1-200 fine, $600 suspended pending completion of requirements. Days 1 to 30, complete wheelchair accessibility training course. Day 60, follow-up hearing to assess compliance and transformation. Here is what I'm ordering. First, you will write a letter of apology to Mr. Briggs, a real letter, not something your attorney drafts, your own words, your own understanding of what you did and why it was wrong. Yes, Your Honor. Second, you will complete 80 hours of community service with veterans organizations. Not administrative work, Direct service. You will spend time with men and women who sacrificed for this country and learn what real service looks like. I understand. Third, you will pay a fine of $200. However, I'm suspending $600 of that fine pending successful completion of your other requirements. If you fail to complete them, you'll pay the full amount plus additional penalties. Okay. Fourth, you will complete a wheelchair accessibility training course. You will learn what it's like to navigate the world in a wheelchair. You will understand what Mr. Briggs experiences every single day. Yes, sir. Finally, you will return to this courtroom in 60 days for a follow-up hearing. At that hearing, I will assess your compliance, your attitude, and your transformation. Do you understand all of these terms? Henry nodded. I do, Your Honor. I understand. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Henry Carlisle had ever experienced. He showed up at the Providence Veterans Center on his first day expecting resentment, hostility, judgment. Instead, he found himself invisible. The veterans didn't know who he was. They didn't care about his connections or his soon-to-be ex-wife's position. They cared about whether he showed up, whether he listened, whether he treated them with basic dignity. Case follow-up log. Week 3. Defendant has completed 28 of 80 required hours. Initial attitude described as uncomfortable but compliant. Staff notes the defendant seems genuinely affected by conversations with residents. Assigned to Mobility Assistance Program. There was a veteran named Marcus who had lost both arms in Afghanistan. He needed help with everything: eating, dressing, basic tasks that most people took for granted. Henry was assigned to assist him 3 mornings a week. At first, Henry couldn't look at him. The intimacy of the caregiving felt unbearable. But Marcus was patient. He told stories about his service, about his family, about the day everything changed. And slowly, Henry began to listen. You know what the hardest part is? Marcus asked one morning. What? It's not the arms. It's the way people look at me. Like I'm less than. Like I'm an inconvenience. Like they wish I would just move faster, get out of their way, stop reminding them that sacrifice is real. Henry thought about Mr. Briggs in the crosswalk, about the way he had honked, shouted, nearly run him down because he was in a hurry. I'm sorry, Henry said quietly. For what? For being one of those people. And then there was the wheelchair training. Henry spent an entire day in a wheelchair, navigating downtown Providence. He discovered that curbs he had never noticed were obstacles, that doors he had walked through thousands of times were almost impossible to open, that people stared or, worse, looked away entirely, as if seeing him was uncomfortable. By the end of the day, his arms ached, his dignity was bruised, and something inside him had shifted. Week 6 brought the meeting he had been dreading. Leonard Briggs was at the Veterans Center for his regular physical therapy session. Henry saw him across the room and felt his stomach drop. He walked over slowly. Mr. Briggs? The elderly veteran looked up. Recognition flickered in his eyes. You're the man from the crosswalk. Yes, sir, I am. You've been volunteering here. Yes, it's part of my sentence, but that's not why I kept coming back. Leonard studied him for a long moment. Why did you keep coming back? Because I needed to understand what I did to you. Not just the legal definition, the real impact. I needed to understand what it feels like to be dismissed, overlooked, treated like an obstacle instead of a person. And do you understand now? Henry sat down across from him. I think I'm starting to. I spent a day in a wheelchair last week, just one day. And by the end of it, I was exhausted. Not just physically, but emotionally. The way people looked at me or didn't look at me. The way doors wouldn't open. The way curbs appeared out of nowhere. He paused. You live that every day. And I almost killed you because I was in a hurry. Leonard was quiet for a while. I appreciate you saying that. It doesn't erase what happened, but it helps. I don't expect forgiveness, Mr. Briggs. I just want you to know that I'm different now. Or at least I'm trying to be. That's all any of us can do. Try. 60 days after his initial hearing, Henry Carlisle returned to Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. He looked different. The expensive suit was the same, but the man wearing it had changed. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement had faded into something quieter, more uncertain. but also more real. Mr. Carlisle, Judge Caprio said, I see you've completed all terms of your sentence. 80 hours of community service, the fine paid, the wheelchair training completed, the letter delivered. Yes, Your Honor. The reports from the Veterans Center say you continued volunteering after your required hours were complete. Is that accurate? Yes, sir. I go twice a week now. I'm assigned to the Mobility Assistance Program. I help veterans with daily tasks, getting dressed, eating, navigating the center. That's significant. Why did you continue? Henry took a breath. Because I met people who changed me. Marcus, who lost both arms in Afghanistan and still has more grace than I ever had. Leonard, Mr. Briggs, who forgave me even though he had no reason to. Veterans who served their country and came home to a world that doesn't always see them. He paused. I continued because I realized I had been living in a bubble where my wife's position made me special, where rules didn't apply, where other people's struggles were inconveniences rather than realities. I don't want to live in that bubble anymore. Governor Ava Carlisle was in the gallery again. She stood. Your Honor, may I address the court? Please. She walked forward slowly. Henry and I are still legally separated. I don't know what our future holds. But I want to say something publicly that I should have said years ago. She turned to face her husband. I enabled you, Henry. I let you use my name because it was easier than confronting you. I looked the other way when you dropped my title to get special treatment because I didn't want the conflict. I failed you as a partner because I didn't hold you accountable when it mattered. Henry's eyes were wet. Ava, let me finish. What you did to that veteran was terrible. The way you spoke to that officer was shameful. But watching you over the past 2 months, seeing you show up at the center, hearing the reports about your service, I'm reminded of the man I married, the man before the power went to his head. I'm sorry for all of it. I know, and I'm sorry too, for not stopping it sooner. Subscribe if you're over 50 and love real justice, because this courtroom proves that accountability and redemption can exist in the same sentence. Judge Caprio leaned forward. Mr. Carlisle, I want to leave you with something. You came into this courtroom 2 months ago believing that your wife's position made you untouchable. That rules existed for other people, that you could threaten officers, endanger veterans, and walk away without consequences. I was wrong, completely wrong. You were. But being wrong isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. The question is always what you do next. Whether you return to your old life surrounded by privileges and protections, or whether you build a new life based on something more solid. I want to build something better, Your Honor. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I want to try. Judge Caprio nodded. Mr. Briggs, he said, do you have anything you'd like to add? Leonard Briggs wheeled himself forward. Your Honor, when this started, I was angry, not just at Mr. Carlisle, at a world that produces people like him, people who see a man in a wheelchair and think obstacle instead of human being. He turned to Henry. But I've watched you change. I've seen you serving at the center, helping veterans with tasks that most people wouldn't bother with. And I've seen something in your eyes that wasn't there before. Humility, maybe, or just awareness. Thank you, Mr. Briggs. I don't deserve your kindness. Maybe not, but you're earning it. That's what matters. Judge Caprio picked up his gavel. Mr. Carlisle, case closed, but I expect this to be the beginning of your transformation, not the end. The veterans in this community, the men and women who sacrificed everything, they deserve our respect, not our impatience, not our entitlement, our respect. I understand, Your Honor, and I'm committed to showing that. Good, then we're done here. The gavel fell, and in a Providence courtroom, a man who had once believed power made him untouchable discovered that the only thing that truly matters is the person you choose to become. Dramatization for storytelling and education, not legal advice or reporting,